everybody, and welcome back. This is Crazy Bat Lady. So today I'm going to talk about Yae Miko, the new Electro character in Genshin Impact. Now, she can deal some very, very juicy electro damage with her turrets and her amazing ult. Despite not being able to do elemental reactions, she's a very valuable party member for your team. One thing that is worth mentioning is that her Ascension stat is crit rate, so you don't have to worry as much about crit rate on your artifacts. Let's take a look more of this before she eats more of Yae's birds. You see here, I don't even have that much crit rate, and it's still at 67%. So this leaves a lot more wiggle room for putting energy recharge, attack percentage, etc, etc. So let's talk about her talents a little bit. Her auto attacks unleash like a little kitsune that does electro damage, obviously, and she has some of the prettiest auto attacks in the entire game, subjectively. While the modifiers might not be huge, her charge attack can do pretty good damage despite its slow ramp-up time. And, you can still do decent damage with those, but most of her damage is going to come from her elemental skill, which is basically turrets that you put down. You can put down 3 at a time, and they have a duration of 14 seconds and a cooldown of 4 seconds. So you can constantly be casting these. Do keep in mind that these only go up to level 3 unless you have her Constellation 2. So you can completely ignore the level 4, unless you have that Constellation, of course. So it depends on how many you have out on the level, for 1 turret being level 1 and 3 turrets level 3. Her elemental burst is very straightforward. It's just a huge burst of electro damage, and it also depends on your turrets. You want to make sure that you have all 3 turrets out, because the Tenko Thunderbolt damage is from the turrets, and that will hit 3 times. And the modifier is gigantic, and it's actually bigger than the base damage. Do keep in mind this has a 90 energy cost and a staggering 22-second cooldown. So she's a little trickier to run in a quick-stop team. However, when you cast her ultimate, she will reset all of her turrets, making it easier to cast it again. Her passive talent also makes it so that Elemental Mastery will give you a little bit of bonus damage on your turrets, but I wouldn't focus on this too much, as it's not a substantial amount of damage. I would just think of it as like, if you have Elemental Mastery on your substats, that's great. And another passive talent she has is a 25% chance to get 1 regional character talent material when crafting. You know, nice to have. It's only 25%, but you know. So, about the turrets. Now, the turrets have some pretty good range on them, but you also really want to be precise about your placement. As you see, it'll boost you back if you're not holding the directional key. If you hold a direction, you can go whatever direction you are holding, and it will boost you forward. This is also great for dodging. One thing that's worth mentioning is that you can hunt with these. As you can see, it zapped the bird. And since they're high range, it makes it so that you can sneak up on birds and shock them, or other creatures, such as hilly trolls. Now, here's about what the range looks like. I'm a little too far away here, so go a tiny bit closer, and there you go. You want to place them in sort of like a triangle fashion, so they're all close enough to each other, and the enemies will go in and just get completely destroyed by them. So if you're using Miko as your main DPS, you're going to want to animation cancel while using her charge attack. And you can do this in one of 2 ways. You can either dash or you can jump. I recommend jumping as it doesn't consume as much stamina. But I'll show dashing first. So you can see as soon as her arm gets to the right side, that's when you want to dash or jump. I only got a couple off, I believe 3 charge attacks from dash canceling, and this is why I recommend the jump canceling. As soon as her arm goes over her shoulder, jump. And as you can see, I'm not consuming nearly as much stamina because I'm not dashing. I actually got 6 off, as opposed to 3. Now, the big question here is, do you need Raiden Shogun to use her? Well, the answer is no. You can also use Fischl. You definitely want some form of electro battery. Raiden Shogun is just an amazing teammate for her because their ults bounce off each other and they just synergize so well. So she's not required, but looking at this 90 energy cost really makes her sound more appealing. Anyhow, one thing I want to talk about is the AFK build. I mean, it's not completely AFK, but because you still have to run around and place the turrets, but basically what I do here is use Zhongli, Albedo, and Raiden, or at least some form of geo constructs. You place your turrets and everything kind of just dies from the pulsing geo damage and electro damage. This is just completely relying on your elemental skill. It's just a lazy way to play her, and it's pretty entertaining just not touching the enemies and watching them die. So they will proc Albedo's elemental skill, of course, and also Raiden's. So this is viable for a lot of situations, but definitely by no means overpowered. Mostly, I'm gonna suggest using her as a sub DPS with her turrets and switching around a bit. So let's take a look at that build. I'm gonna squish the two into one, DPS and sub DPS, because the build is gonna be so similar, if not identical. So you're here, you want crit rate and crit damage, as usual. You do want energy recharge. Even if you're running an electro battery, you still want some energy recharge, but you don't have to worry too much if you have someone like Raiden or Fischl on the team. One of the best things about Miko is that she can run a lot of weapons effectively. One of my favorite being the Lost Prayer to the Sacred Winds. You do need a lot of field time for this to be effective, but it is a great choice. The new 4-star weapon, Oathsworn Eye, is also a fantastic choice, as it basically just gives you a flat 48% energy recharge at refinement 5. And as long as your elemental skill's out, which it should be if you're running her, then that'll always be up. The Solar Pearl is a really good choice, especially at high refinements. And at high refinements, it can even out damage Lost Prayer. So this is a very good DPS weapon. And of course, her signature weapon, Kagura's Variety, is her best in slot and is an amazing choice for whichever way you want to play her. So highly recommend on that one. Also, Skyward Atlas is great. The Widsith is a good weapon too, but do keep in mind that her elemental skill does not snapshot, so you will have to be on field the whole 10 seconds for that to work. If you don't have any of the mentioned weapons, Map America can work. It does have elemental mastery, it's substat, and gives you a little bit of elemental reaction damage. So it's not a terrible choice, but I would say the others are a better choice. Now you might be thinking Sacrificial Fragments is great, but it's kind of a dead passive. So for 3 stars, the only 3-star that I really think is good is the Magic Guide. So it gives you extra damage against enemies affected by Hydro or Electro. And she works so well in Electro-charged teams. But more on that in a little bit. She does not have a signature artifact set, or any artifact set other than Gambler that affects elemental skill damage. So you're going to want to run a 2-piece mix. 2-piece Thundering Fury, 2-piece Gladiator Shimenawa. You can also run 2-piece Wanderers, 2-piece Emblem, or 2-piece Noblesse. These all work fine for DPS or sub DPS. And as usual, you're going to want to have a lot of crit rate, crit damage, and attack percentage on all of her artifacts. Elemental Mastery is a nice little bonus to have, so that if your pieces do roll an Elemental Mastery, it won't be a dead stat. I don't recommend running an Elemental Mastery sans though, as attack percentage is pretty much always going to out damage it. You can also run Energy Recharge if you have really amazing substats, but for the most part, I would say attack percentage is going to be our best bet. Elemental damage bonus on the Goblet, it's just going to be better than attack percentage because she only does electro damage. And then crit rate or crit damage on the Circlet, whichever you need more of. And as for 4 pieces, you can run a 4-piece Wanderers if you're using her for charge attacks, as it does give you an extra 35%. And this is a pretty viable option. You can also run a 4-piece Thundering Fury if you want to. Only if you're doing like a lot of elemental reactions, which, you know, as I mentioned before, you probably should be if you're using her, like Electrocharge or Overload. A 4-piece Thunder Soother can work too, but the 2-piece is a really dead stat. So I never recommend this set because I don't find it to be the best. It's also a pain to farm, and there's better ways for you to spend your resin. You can also run 4-piece Emblem of Severed Fate if you want. As for teams, Yae Miko really shines in an Electrocharge team. And if you're running her as a main DPS, as she does take a lot of field time, you're going to want a shielder or a healer because she's incredibly squishy. So it's great to have someone like Zhongli or Diona on the team so that she doesn't die all the time. And of course, a battery / other DPS like Raiden Shogun or Official is a fantastic choice here, as they synergize really nicely and it helps get her ultimate up. You can run Xingqiu, you can also run Mona or Kokomi for the Hydro part of this. Of course, you can also run a Super Taser team, as I like to call it, with 3 Electro characters and a Hydro character. Of course, you can splash in some Anemo damage here using Kazuha or Sucrose, even Venti, as she does work pretty well with Venti if they're all grouped up. She'll shock them all. And you can run her in an Overload team as well, using Xiangling, Bennett, Raiden, etc., etc. So here's a little showcase. You do want to have her on the field a lot, and she does work really well as an auto attacker, despite her attacks not being super fast. This is how I like to run her anyhow. So pretty nice. Pretty nice indeed. So if you're running her as a sub DPS or main DPS, her gear is going to be pretty much the same. Her best stats being a 2-piece Shimenawa Glad, 2-piece Thundering Fury. Alternatively, you can use 4-piece Wanderers, Thunder Soother, or Thundering Fury, but they're not going to be as good as the aforementioned 2 pieces. You can also mix and match in Wanderers, Noblesse, even Gamblers, but if you are going to use Gamblers, make sure that one of the pieces is a flower, and definitely not the Electro piece as well. But that's more of until you can get something better. As for weapons, all the crit rate weapons and crit damage weapons are great. Kagura's Verity being her best. Any of the 5 stars. Solar Pearl. Widsith is really nice. That's definitely a better option for her if she is on field. And you can use Map of Mirror. Black Agate also works. Oathsworn Eye. Oh, and Hakushin Ring, because she's always dealing electro damage, and this will help buff your party. Alright, so what if you want to run her in a nuke team? Because she does have really big burst damage. And you can hit a lot higher numbers than that. I didn't even make it past the second shock. So you see, she does a lot of damage. Now in this team, you're going to want to run probably Widsith, because all of her skills are great for this as well. Mostly the attack percentage and elemental damage bonus, because the elemental mastery isn't going to be great for burst. Of course, once again, any of the crit weapons, Oathsworn Eye, you can keep your ult up more often, but you will have to run a little bit more crit rate / crit damage if you're using that. And for the artifact set, 2-piece Noblesse is definitely recommended. You can also use a 4-piece Emblem of Severed Fate. And as mentioned before, the same artifacts, Thundering Fury, Glad, Shimenawa, some sort of combination of the 2. You're You're going to want to have more energy recharge if you're running her this way. So you could run an energy recharge Sans. You won't see as high of numbers, but you will see her burst more often. And you definitely want an Animo unit, so you can swirl her Electro to make her burst hit harder. Kujosara is great, especially if you have her at C6. I do not, but C6 Kujosara is going to be amazing for her. And of course, Bennett. If you have Kazuha, he's amazing here too. You can also use Raiden, because she'll boost your ult damage, or Zhongli for shredding resistance. You can also use Mona, because Mona will make you deal more damage as well. And if you want a more practical build, definitely run a battery and Zhongli to keep you safe. Kind of mentioned before, she's super squishy, so she can get one-shot pretty easily. But this is mostly just for seeing big numbers anyhow. Let's try this out in the Abyss. Get the Bennett buff, get the Slara buff. And boom. That's pretty good damage. And this is at talent level 6, by the way. So that's gonna get a lot better in time. The best sets here, once again, are gonna be Glad Shimanoa. Thundering Fury, Noblesse is pretty much a must on this set. You can also use 4-piece Emblem. Also 2-piece Emblem fix in there as well. And her best weapons are going to be Kagura's Verity, Skyward Atlas is great, Oathsworn is great, Solar Pearl, Widsith. Unfortunately, there is no Wavebreaker's Fin or the Catch for Catalyst users. Hopefully this will change in the future to open up some better options for her burst damage. As for Constellations, she actually has some really nice constellations. Her first constellation being that she refunds 8 energy for each totem present when she casts her ultimate. So if you have all 3 out, which you should, you'll get 24 energy back, and this really helps cut down on her high cost. So not a bad option there, but also not required. Her second constellation is really good. As mentioned before, this will make it so that your totems can go up to level 4, starting at level 2. And they'll also increase the attack range by 60%. And this is really big. This is a very game-changing constellation for her. Of course, her 3 just upgrades her ultimate. And her constellation 4 basically gives everyone in your party a 20% electro damage bonus. As long as her turret is hitting enemies, you will get that 20% bonus. So this can pretty much have 100% uptime, which is really great for mono electro or electro charge teams. Of course, 5, same as always, this is gonna increase your turret. And her C6. Her turrets are going to ignore 60% of energy defense. And that's pretty huge. It's sort of like Raiden's C2 in that regard. Very powerful. She's seeming like she's probably busted at C6, but I will never know. Anyhow, I really hope that you found this helpful. Sorry it was so late. I've just had a lot of stuff going on, so. Anyhow, did I mention I love her animations? Very nice. Anyways, please have a wonderful day. Like and subscribe, and I will see you around next time. Bye.